Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Beyond the Saga, where we dive into all of the other stories beyond the Saga films. I'm Dave Cottingham with my co-host, Hannah Burr. How are you, Hannah?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. We are back at it and really enjoying doing these things because there's so many stories out there, like we keep saying, and so many things to talk about, so many characters in all of these stories. And this one in particular, I wanted to get you going on. I read this comic book series years ago when it first came out, and I'm really enjoying getting back into it and talking to you about it. And this is the Darth Vader series of comics, written by Kieron Gillen. And so going back again, in 2015, when Marvel started re-releasing the comic books, they did two series right away, which was the Star Wars series, which eventually we will get into because I think I told you before, they kind of parallel each other, right? And then of course this Vader series came out. It was 25 issues, ran from 2015 to 2016, and it fills in that gap between episodes 4 and 5. The 3-year gap that's in between years. So it's a great book. It's a great read. I will say the Vader series doesn't fully fill it in. The Star Wars book does. But anyway, this Vader series was pretty impactful. A lot of people raved about this series, this comic, because it really puts Vader in a different light and opens up a lot of things. So with that, we will take this episode. We are just going to talk about the first 6 issues, which is basically the first trade paperback, right, of this series. So
Volume 1.
Volume 1. So as we do with all these episodes, Hannah, I want to turn it over to you to give me your first impressions after reading the first 6 issues of this book.
Well, I kind of feel like a broken record player at this point.
That's okay.
In saying that there were pieces missing in the overall puzzle that I didn't know were missing until I read this comic. There were questions I didn't know needed to be asked and answered until reading this comic. It really does fill in those gaps between 4 and 5. And I think the biggest one is Darth Vader realizing that Luke is his son.
Yes.
In seeing A New Hope, Star Wars, I always thought that Darth Vader connected the dots immediately when he said the Force is strong with this one.
Interesting. Yeah.
But then in reading the comic, you realize, no, it doesn't click right away. And then when it clicks, you then get this turn, and all of a sudden Vader is thinking, okay, I can totally get rid of Darth Sidious with my son by my side.
Right.
It sort of gives a whole reason behind him dethroning Palpatine, besides the traditional idea that the Sith are always trying to outsmart each other. So I think that's very impactful. And then there's also the reason, there's another reason why he wants to go against Palpatine that is revealed, but I won't share what that is because that is a slight spoiler.
Okay.
We might talk about it later, though.
Yes.
At least for this moment, that choice and that discovery really does put him on this different path. So it really gives an insight into Vader that wasn't there before.
Mm-hmm.
And you already feel sympathetic towards him because you grew up or you saw Anakin grow up. And you see Anakin go through this whole journey. But this really makes you go, wow, Vader, I feel sorry for the guy.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a good point you bring up about the connection with Luke, because Casey and I talk about this have talked about this several times on our weekly show, is how impactful can these stories, books, comics really be on the canon timeline of the movies? Because you run into that you run into that question sometimes of, since not everybody consumes the expanded universe, right? You're probably your diehard Star Wars fans like us that really want to know everything, but then you have your Star Wars fans that are really just the movie fans. They so really how much detail and how many significant events can you have in these books and comics and stuff like that? And we've kind of always debated whether or not Lucasfilm would really do something significant, like kill a major character or have a significant detail of a character be revealed, right? So, but I think as you get into these comics and as you expand, and I'm not talking about you specifically, more everybody's listening, is as people get into that, it's like, there are significant moments in these books that really change what happens in these films and what you may have thought in these films. And I think it makes the films even better each time you watch it, because you have a different viewpoint, right? So that is a major one that you brought up, because I think as we get into reading more of this series, there is that understanding a little bit more of what Vader came to realize at the end of episode 4 to what he knows in episode 5, because there's 3 years there. There's 3 years of knowledge that he's collecting, right? And these books are the ones that tell us what he's doing, which is great.
I think another perfect example of how the books can give more information and bring more context to the films is, sorry to go on this tangent, but a Queen's Shadow. That brings a whole new perspective into the blockade of Naboo and how much the people of Naboo really suffered.
Yes.
So you're right. These books, comics, games bring a whole new perspective and just add more to the story.
Absolutely.
Sorry to go on a tangent, but that is the perfect example to support what you said.
Yes. And let's get into the next discussion, which is, I think, what this book also introduces is a little bit of that conflict. And it's weird to say conflict between Vader and Palpatine, right? When people are like, what? They're on the same side. Well, Sith are, that's just the way Sith are. Right? They're always trying to outdo each other, trying to find a replacement for each other. But I'd love to get your take on the conflict that you're sensing in this book that's starting.
I mean, it's big. Palpatine chooses to do something that Anakin / Darth Vader is venomously against. I think we can share it. It's. I'll say this: it plants the seed for Palpatine creating clones of himself.
Yes,
it plants that seed that we later see in Rise of Skywalker. So it works.
It does work, and it's really crazy that you brought that up, because you had brought that up before we started recording, and I'd never thought of that. And it's crazy to think, this thing coming out in 2015, that it would make that kind of connection years later in the timeline. Excuse me. So it's really, really crazy and killer observation, and I hadn't really thought of it until you said something like that. So, but
ultimately and I guess maybe his experience from the Clone Wars might have sparked a bit of, I don't know, but
Yeah.
there's
Well, it seems
you
like.
can,
Go ahead.
you can just tell that he immediately disagrees with what Palpatine has been doing behind his back without telling him,
Right.
which you can also tell he's very offended by that. And I think it's actually right before that he connects the dots that Luke is his son. So I think that decision immediately makes him go, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to overthrow him with my son.
Yep. Yeah.
Which, ironically, he does end up doing.
Yes, he
For
does.
the light side of the Force.
For the light side. That's right. That's true. That's actually true. Yeah, and I think that's a huge setup, for again what we see in episode 5, because that's been his goal the entire time. I'm gonna try to capture you and deliver you to the Emperor, but then in the meantime, I'm gonna try to pull you over to the dark side and just stay with me, right? Because in the end, that's what he wants to do, is rule the galaxy instead of Palpatine. So it is a good setup. I think there's really cool, I thought, which is really, again, revisited again, really good familiar characters that get brought back into this book, right? I think the very first frame, which is awesome, is Jabba's palace. He goes to Tatooine, visits Jabba. There's a great scene there. We get reintroduced to General Tag, which, if people remember, he was in A New Hope. I don't think I remember when I first read this, I'm like, oh, he survived. He wasn't on the Death Star.
That shocked me too. I was like, wait, what? I thought he was dead.
Yeah, totally. Because we don't see him in episode 5 or episode 6. So something might happen to him, after this book. But the really cool thing too is Vader goes back to Geonosis in this book.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's funny because in the book, someone asks him, "Have you been to Geonosis?" And then there's that flashback panel of Anakin and Padme, right? Yeah, it's great, right? But then, of course, I think one of the best parts about it is the introduction of what has become one of the most, not maybe one of the most popular, but one of the popular characters currently in Star Wars right now is Dr. Aphra. And so she's introduced in this book. Of course, she ends up getting her own comic series, but she's introduced in this book, and plays a major role in what Vader's trying to do. So, what were you? I guess what were your thoughts on some of these nostalgic things popping in, and anything I missed that maybe you saw?
I mean, you named it all. I mean, also his interaction with Jabba the Hutt too is just iconic.
Yes.
And it was very cool to see all of those familiar characters. But I think the most nostalgic thing for me, and I guess what also made me sympathize with Darth Vader, is that you see Anakin is still there. Anakin isn't gone. And the flashbacks, not only with the flashbacks, but I think for me, the most powerful panel in the entire volume 1, and this isn't really a spoiler, is you see Darth Vader standing among a bunch of slain sand people.
Yes. Yeah,
and
that's true.
Like, my work here is done. And I just was like,
I know. He still went out there. Yeah.
Like, you don't want to root for him for doing that, but at the same time, you go, Anakin is still in there. There is still hope. Luke was right. He sensed the conflict in his dad, and it was there from the beginning. With the flashbacks, and then with that, you just go, man, Anakin is still in there.
Yeah.
He's not gone. He's not this new character. It's still Anakin.
Very
So to
true.
me, that was the most nostalgic part of Volume 1.
Yeah, that was, and I think that is as you see with this series, and then of course the next Vader series that takes place, which takes place back after Episode 3. I think there is a common theme that there is parts of Anakin that he still is trying to, either get rid of or fight with. You know what I mean? It's like he's still trying to find. I mean, what's kind of again going off topic a little bit. Vader. What we do find out in some of these comics is Vader is still very much trying to figure out what happened to Padme and how he can bring her back. This goes back to also the Vader VR series that they created. I mean, that's what that whole theme of that is about, is trying to find how to bring Padme back.
What if, I'm sorry, I literally just thought of this right now.
Yeah.
What if the seed that planted the idea of clones for Palpatine is what made Vader realize that Palpatine kept this idea from him all this time, and all this time he could have brought back Padme.
Ooh, man.
I just thought of that one now. I'm sorry, but
yeah. No, that's interesting to think of. Did Vader ever really know that cloning was he obviously knew cloning was a possibility because of the clones, right?
Right.
But it's did Palpatine know a way to bring someone back to life through cloning,
to maintain life,
or to maintain life, right? Yeah. That's a deep dive right there. That's a whole nother episode, I think. Very good.
You just walking through that about saving Padme, just
yeah. Well,
anyway.
And there's a story there too about Vader's castle on Mustafar that is a method of trying to bring Padme back as well. So it's crazy how deep that goes, but that's on another episode. Yeah. Let's dive into another familiar character really that comes back, and that is Boba Fett. Someone that we've been talking a lot about, of course, possibly showing up at The Mandalorian this season. But again, this goes to show you how impactful the comics are, because this is a major reveal, and you already talked about it, how Vader discovers that he has a son. And we now know it's Boba Fett was the one that found out. And that's the beauty too of the crossovers, because in this book we see Vader and Boba Fett have that ultimate conversation, but in the Star Wars series of books that's parallel to this, we actually see that confrontation between Luke and Boba Fett. So I encourage people to read them both as you go along. So I thought that was a major character reveal, as far as and plot point reveal for the entire saga, because that is something that obviously no one knew for 40 years from the movies. Like who told him that his son was Luke Skywalker when Empire starts. So surprised by that connection?
Definitely surprised by that connection, but I think it also reinforces the fact that, we have the liberty of saying, oh yeah, Anakin, Darth Vader, they're the same. But it just reinforces that in this universe, at this moment, the only people that know that Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader are the same are Palpatine and Vader. So, because otherwise I think people would have been like, oh, guess what I found out, kind of. Meanwhile, Boba Fett just states it as if he's commenting on yesterday's ball game. He said, oh yeah, they ran into like Luke Skywalker, and Vader's like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, right.
It reinforces the fact that nobody knows Anakin and Vader are the same.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's very true. And it's again, it's great to make that, to have that connection there, because if you think back to episode 2, they both, Boba Fett and Anakin, were on Geonosis, right? Totally separate storylines going on.
Forgot about that.
But their paths were, next to each other in that sense, right? So it's cool to see those connections, and then ultimately, they cross this path and have the connection between Luke Skywalker and revealing that secret. So so like we do on most of these episodes, we have a lot more story, we have a lot more issues. There's 25 issues here that we'll get through, so we've only got the first 6 now, right? So but right now I feel like we've already hit on the impact that this has had on the overall saga. So what are those? Is it the Luke thing? What are those biggest impacts you feel like, as far as your perception of Vader in the movies?
I think the first major thing is when Vader connects the dots, so Luke is his son.
Right.
And then I think the other thing is the seed planted for the big reveal in Rise of Skywalker, when Palpatine has all these clones or experiments with cloning,
yeah,
on a different level than just the clones that we see in Clone Wars. That seed is planted and the experimentation has, quote unquote, begun. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's good. I think, for me, I think it's I think that's a major, again, detail about finding out about Luke Skywalker. Because we just never got that information from the movies. And it's not as significant as episodes 1 to 2. That's 10 years, but 4 to 5, there's 3 years there that a lot of stuff happens. It's a lot of people, I think, mention it, but when you end episode 4 and you go into episode 5, there's a big time gap there, and there's a lot of things that have changed. They're hiding out on Hoth. Luke's still trying to train, and and Leia's more of a bigger leader in the rebellion. Han's trying to, get out and do his thing still. It's like, but there's so much story there in between, and I really actually am ecstatic that Lucasfilm went back and to say, look, let's fill in that gap with these comics. So you basically can watch episode 4, read these Star Wars series and Vader series, and it leads right up to episode 5, and you have all of that backstory now, right? So I think it's fantastic, and I think it's very, just the overall is just very impactful for all these characters to know what they experienced before you get into The Empire Strikes Back, So
Absolutely.
So we will continue to talk about this book and this comic series all the way through 25 issues of Vader, because I'm telling you, it gets really, really good. There's so much more. I'm excited to reread those and talk to them with you. So
I'm still amazed that a comic series can still capture the action that you would see in a Star Wars movie.
Right? Yeah.
Side comment, but
no, yeah, because I'm with you. I enjoy listening to the audiobooks, because they have sound effects in them and music, and but visually, I've got to imagine what I'm seeing. Right, I do like the comic books because they actually show me what, if I was watching a movie, basically this is the scene I would be seeing, and it's great art. It's great. It's a great book to pick up. So again, it's written by Kieron Gillen, and you can pick that up, I'm sure. I know Amazon's selling the trades. I think they actually have put them in hardcover books now, which are usually the 12 issue books now.
Oh,
so you can
wow.
get them in hardcover 12 issues now. So I think this one has 2 books since it was 25 issues, or you can get them in 4 trades. I buy the trades. So and I got the digital versions. So it's really good stuff. Okay. Well, again, thank you, Hannah, for doing the episode and reading Darth Vader. We will be back again the next episode talking about the next, the next 6 issues, right? So we will continue on and knock out this series. So again, thanks everybody for watching. Hit that subscribe button to get more of us, and let us know what you thought about it. All that good stuff. So thanks, Hannah.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Take care, everybody. May the Force be with you.